Having made my case for rational definitions of both atheism and conservatism, I wanted to point out the general problems that most people have when using general labels to refer to themselves and their arguments. Atheism is a label. Theism is a label. Conservative is a label. Liberal is a label. Most people use general-purpose labels to differentiate between various views, beliefs, and opinions. But labels simply are not particularly useful when it comes to addressing a single person's actual position. See, labels are verbal shorthand to place various and sundry individuals and arguments into pretty vague boxes. It's easier to talk about liberals and conservatives than it is to differentiate between thousands of individuals who each may have a somewhat different interpretation of what the label means. If you ask 10 liberals or 10 conservatives what they mean by liberal or conservative, you're going to get 10 different and perhaps contradictory answers. The same is true if you ask 10 self-identified Christians what they mean by Christianity, or Muslims what they mean by Islam. Different people have different views, and in debating individual ideas, it's important to address what these people actually believe and not simply lump them all together into some incoherent pile and pretend they all mean exactly the same thing by the label they choose to adopt. That doesn't make labels useless. It just means that we have to be careful how we use them and don't rely on the specific label to define the person, but on the person to define the label as they use it in each specific case. This becomes a problem because each and every one of us, myself included, are guilty of letting the labels define our opponents. It's something we all must be aware of and fight against every single day. Our brains make it difficult because this kind of shorthand really makes the brain's function easier. If we come into contact with a bunch of people with somewhat similar views, it's much easier to lump them all together under the same label and pretend that they all believe the same thing across the board, even if that's not the case. The other and perhaps opposite problem with labels comes not when we mistakenly lump other people's similar views together under a single label, but when people attempt to take all of their disparate views and force them together under the umbrella of a single label. This unfortunately happens all the time and in many different areas of life. You'll have religious groups which try to co-opt political positions under their particular religious labels, and political groups which try to co-opt religious positions under their label as well. We see that with the ultra-religious GOP, where Republican suddenly has a very religious connotation that has nothing to do with politics. We saw it a couple of years ago with the Atheism Plus nonsense, where ultra-liberal atheists decided that people couldn't be atheists unless they followed a laundry list of approved liberal political positions. We see it with feminism, where some radical feminists are convinced that anyone who sticks the feminist label on their forehead also has to be for other causes as well. This is verbal simplicity gone too far, where not only is the individual making unwarranted assumptions about the positions that the label describes, but also about the positions the label has nothing to do with as well. There's a difference between being verbally efficient and being lazy. This causes significant confusion among people who simply take the labels as presented and don't think about the context and content of those labels. So to recap, labels can be useful when talking about relatively large groups of individuals in saying that a particular position is shared by a group that has label X. That doesn't mean that all people who identify with label X necessarily have that particular position. And if someone says something about a position that you do not share in relation to a label that you do, don't freak out and pretend they're talking about you specifically. You haven't been singled out. Your personal definition of a label may be quite different from the definition of those around you who might identify with the same label. However, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be careful in our usage of labels as well. You can wear many different hats. We all do. I'm an atheist. I'm a conservative. I'm a bibliophile. I'm a father. I'm a husband. All of these are separate things, and it makes no sense to try to pick one of them and pretend it must include all of them. Being an atheist has nothing whatsoever to do with my political positions. Being a husband has nothing to do at all with my enjoyment of books. Being a liberal has nothing to do with atheism. Being a Republican has nothing to do with religion. People need to figure out that wearing a label isn't a complete description of every facet of their lives. It isn't even a good explanation of their precise beliefs on any particular subject. It's just shorthand, and shorthand doesn't ever tell the whole story. Thanks for listening. I hope you come back for my next video and will like, subscribe, and spread the word about the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments and visit my blog where I write about these things constantly. Until next time, take care.